Hello, everybody. This is Kenton Taylor Howard from the University of Central Florida, and today I'm going to be giving a quick video demonstration of Ink and just some basic concepts for how the program works and how you can make some very, small structural stuff in a digital story. I'll break this video series up into two components. So this is going to kind of focus on some of the beginning information, and I'll also have a video later on that talks a little bit more about a little bit of advanced functionality within the Ink editor. What I'm at here is the download page for Inky, which is the editor that you use to write Ink programs. So you'll obviously want to make sure that you've installed this and selected the correct zip file, downloaded it, extract the zip file on your computer, kind of all the typical stuff that you would do when you're downloading a program from the internet. Once you've got it downloaded, you'll just kind of have to open up the folder and find the program. Ink doesn't have an install function or something like that. So you'll just be kind of relying on going into the actual folder and just clicking and doing it that way. So go ahead and go into the folder and scroll down through the folder until you see this lovely file here that says Inky. Run it, open it up, all that good stuff. And this will actually get you into the Inky editor. It will open it up on your computer. And I would recommend following along while you're watching this video. That wouldn't necessarily be a bad idea. So if you don't have Ink installed yet, you may want to pause real quick, go download it from the download page, get it installed, get it up and running, and then kind of unpause the video and catch back up. So on my computer, I have the Ink editor open, and you can see I've just kind of thrown in some random text just to see that it's working. I'm going to go ahead and open up a commented Ink file that I've got on my computer. And you can find this on web courses. I've uploaded the file so that you can actually take a look at it yourself. And I'm going to be kind of using this file in the demo. So you may want to download that file and open it up on your own computer. Again, if you need to pause for a second, go download the file off of web courses and open it up. That's totally understandable. But I would recommend using that just because it will make your life a little bit easier. So you'll need to actually go and open up an Ink file once you've downloaded it if you're going to follow along with this demo. I've called the Ink file Retelling the Telltale Heart commented for students, so you can kind of click on that file if you've got it on your computer. I will throw out there that you probably need to open it within Ink, like actually using the file menu, going down to open and finding the file on your computer and opening it this way. What I've found is, at least on Windows, and I'm sure this is probably true on other systems too, that if you just kind of click on the Ink file by default, your system probably won't know how to open it. So you're going to need to actually manually go into Ink, go to File, go to Open, and find the file on your computer, which is what I'm doing here. So click on it, open it up. Once you've got it open, you'll be able to see my file with my comments. And what I've basically done is written comments within the Ink code so that you can see them and you can follow along at home while you're watching this video, or you can even just kind of read through the Ink file itself. I think I've tried to make these comments self-explanatory enough that you don't necessarily need to be listening to this video simultaneously, but it probably does help. Up here is an example of what a comment looks like. So you'll see these throughout the file, these / symbols, and then text that shows up in green. This is not code. It's not part of the story or anything like that. This is just information for people reading the file. So these are comments that are kind of going to help you as a tutorial to work through Ink. One of the things that I've also done here is labeled a few of the comments with the note advanced. I'm not going to talk about them in this video because those are kind of part of the advanced Ink demo instead. But if you're looking at the file yourself and you're seeing those, you can skip past those this time. Those are for advanced users, and I would recommend not turning around and kind of coming back to those comments until after you've actually gone through this tutorial. You may want to also read the Ink web tutorial before you watch this video and read through this file. I think it will help to make a little bit more sense so that you already have some context for how Ink works. So I would recommend looking at their web tutorial if you haven't already. That being said, if you want to watch this video first and watch my comments first and then do the tutorial, that's up to you. So it's kind of, you can do it in either direction. I'm going to kind of approach this from the perspective that you probably already have read the tutorial, but I'm going to explain everything kind of from the ground up too. So anyway, what you're seeing here is the Inky editor. On the left, I've got my code. So this is the code that's actually creating the story. It shows up on the left side of the window. On the right side, I'm actually seeing the resulting story. So one of the nice things about the Ink editor, and one of the reasons why I think it's great for someone who's learning how to create digital stories, is that it's like a play as you code editor, in the sense that you can write your code, and while you're writing your code, you'll actually see the corresponding changes show up in this panel. So for example, if I go and I add some italics to this word project, you're going to actually see the word project change on the right. So pay attention real quick while I add that in, and you'll see the letters change. Give me a second here. So you'll see, because I put the kind of I tags, which this is HTML code if you're not familiar with it, around the word project, it italicized the word project, and it immediately changed. You were able to immediately see the change on the right side of the screen. So this is really, really useful when you're trying to write code and put together a story, because you can use this to see whether or not your story is actually working properly, and whether everything is like going to the places you want it to go to and things like that. I mean, for example, I can sit here while I'm even talking and giving you a demonstration and edit some of my code, and you can even see the changes happen. So this is one of the huge advantages of the Ink editor, is that while you're actually writing your story, you can see what's going on with it. From here, I'm going to get into some of the actual comments that I've got. I'm going to try to highlight some of the relevant code so you can see what I'm talking about when I'm reading through the comments. But obviously, you can read through these comments yourself as well. And I would recommend like going back through this file, even maybe without the video, and just kind of paying attention to the comments themselves. So the first comment I've got here, other than the one here at the very top that just explains what's going on, is a comment that's illustrating one of the most basic functions of Ink. So this is one of the kind of like basic functionalities that you're going to need to know to put together an Ink story. What you'll see here is kind of like a little arrow symbol that I've drawn in, and then the word info page. So that's what's actually showing up. I'll highlight it real quick so you can see it. So right there, what I've got highlighted, this like kind of arrow symbol, and then the word info page after it. It's kind of, you can see it like a blue underline. That code that I've got there, again, this is referred to as a divert in Ink. And essentially what a divert does is it lets you jump to another piece in the story. So when I put in a divert, what I'm telling the Ink editor to do is, once you're done displaying the text that I've got before it, like this project is designed to explore possible variations, that little paragraph of text I wrote, it then tells the Ink editor, okay, now jump to the next section, go to the next place, or go to the place that I've labeled, the info page place, essentially. You'll note here that the user doesn't actually have to click on anything to make that happen, and that's because of the way I wrote the code. So I just kind of dropped this divert in at the end of a paragraph. And what that means is when the editor reaches the end of that paragraph, it's not going to say, okay, user, now click to go to the info page. It's just going to read the code and go, okay, next thing I'm supposed to do is jump to the info page. So it immediately drops down to that next section of the story that I've made. So this is really, really useful if you want to like advance the story into different sections without having the user click on anything. You can do it almost invisibly. So when you look on this editor on the right side, you don't even see that I've made a jump down to this little menu of choices. It just automatically happens. So the user doesn't have to interact with it at all. There's no kind of like hitch or pause or anything like that. They just go straight to this info page. So the next thing I need to explain is, how did I make it go to an info page? How do I divert to a particular spot in the story? So what happens is, and this is a basic functionality of Ink as well, I'm going to highlight it again for you. What I've got here, this equal sign, the word info page, and then another equal sign, this is what's referred to in Ink as a not. That's the way that they label this particular chunk of code. Essentially, what a not is a label for a place in your story. So when you put in the code to create a not, all you're doing is telling the Ink program what's coming under this is called info page. So everything that I put inside of this not is info page. You can write text in here, you can write code in here, so you can write either side of your story. You can write in like actual text descriptions, or you can write in the code that you need to make the story work. But the idea is, this is like setting the different locations in your story, or the different places. And then you can use diverts to divert to a not. So once you've labeled a particular section, like the info page section, I can then put in that divert code that I have up here of info page, and my story will jump to that section whenever it is appropriate. So what I did for this story, because this is a retelling of another short story, Edgar Allan Poe's The Telltale Heart, is I created kind of like a basic information page where the user could get a little information about the actual story. They can get a little bit more information about the Ink editor, or they can just jump straight into the game and kind of get going if that's what they want to do. So that's why I kind of call this the info page, I guess. What I've got here, and this is a pretty hefty amount of text on this comment to kind of explain what's going on. So I'm going to highlight this code, see all of it so you can see kind of what I've got here. Because this is one of the other main functions of Ink. We've got diverts, they let us go to another place in the story. We've got nots, which let us label a place in the story so we can divert to it. And then we have choices. And choices are essentially something that the user can click on. That's the easiest way to define it. So what I've got highlighted here is a choice. And if I create a choice in Ink, I put something in my menu that the user can click. So you can see here, I've got like the plus symbol, a square bracket, this phrase, get more information about the story, and another square bracket. And if you look over here on the right side of the screen, you'll see that what I've got is a clickable option that says get more information about the story. Now, if you look under that code, right here, under the choice, you'll see I've got a bunch of text. So Edgar Allan Poe's short story is a classic mystery short story. The story can be found here, and then a divert that goes back to the info page. So now watch the right side of the screen and watch what happens when I click on get more information about Poe's story. I click, and then the text that's within that choice pops up. Obviously, you see that text that I just highlighted. And then you see that the divert to info page happens again. So after it displays that text, it jumps back to the info page section. Since the info page section has that get more information about Poe's story choice within it, you get to see that choice again, so it pops back up. So essentially, I'm looping the content. Here, I basically made this choice loop back to the info page, so it displays a little bit of text, and then I jump back to the info page again. Now, you might be wondering, how do I end a choice? How does Ink know when the choice is over? And essentially, it doesn't. I guess that's maybe the easiest way to explain it. You end a choice by adding in a new choice. So when you create a choice, everything under that choice is going to happen until Ink hits a divert that takes it to another section or another choice. It basically will keep going until you've entered code to tell Ink to do something new. So if you pay attention to this choice, this get more information about Poe's story, links back to the info page, and then you can obviously click that option again. But there's a couple other options too. So here's the second choice right here, get more information about Ink. Again, I got another plus symbol, I've got a bracket, phrase, get more information about Ink, and then this little overview, Ink is a text-based editor, and if I click here, you can see it pop up on the right side of the screen as well. And then again, it diverts back to the info page, so it kind of loops back around to that content. And then the third choice I've got is just go to the game down here at the very bottom, and that goes to a different divert that jumps to the game start divert, which actually starts up the narrative and the story that the user is playing through. So basically, I've got 3 choices on this info page. 2 of those 3 choices take you back to the info page. The third choice jumps to the start of the game. A couple other things I want to show you about the way I've set up the choices here so that you can kind of wrap your head around how they work. You'll notice that I put a plus symbol in front of all of these choices. And in Ink, if you put a plus symbol in front of a choice, what you're telling Ink to do is not use up that choice. So if I click on get more information about Poe's story, it won't disappear. I can click that option again, basically. I'll show you another type of choice in a second, but the default behavior for a choice in Ink is to not do that. So when the user clicks, the choice gets quote unquote used up and they can't choose that option again. The plus sign choice lets me make looped content. And so if you want to make an info page section or a section that the user is going to return to over and over again, you would want to use the plus symbol because that means that they're going to be able to choose that option again. The other thing that's going around with these choices is that you'll see that I put these square brackets around the choices. So there's kind of this little bracket symbol on it. What that means is that it does not display the choice when I click on it. So, and I'll show you what I mean by that. Let me take out these brackets around, get more information on the story, and then I'll click on it and kind of show you. So when I click more information about Poe's story here, you can see, because I took out the square brackets, it actually puts the phrase, get more information about Poe's story, into the game itself. So if you want to show the user the text of the choice when they click on the choice, don't put square brackets around it. If you do want to hide that text from them, kind of make it so they can't see it anymore, you want to not put the square brackets in. So I'm going to replace my brackets here real quickly just so I can fix my Ink story, and then we'll jump ahead. So So that kind of gives you a basic idea of the structure of how choices work, knots work, and diverts work. And that's essentially enough to put together a basic choose your own adventure story. With those three functions, if you start to think about the way that you might organize a story, that's going to be enough. You label different chunks of your story with knots, then you create the choices and put diverts inside of those choices that lead you to the appropriate knots. And essentially, you've got kind of like a navigatable choose your own adventure story. I do want to show you a couple other small things before I go on, just so you can kind of know about like the difference between different types of choices and just some structural options that you've kind of got within Ink. So what I'm going to do is jump down here to the game start page, and this is where my game actually kind of starts. I'll click over here too so you can see on the right side of the screen what's going on as well. So I've got like a quote from Edgar Allan Poe, and then I've got another little chunk of text here. If you're wondering how I made these as two separate paragraphs, all I did was hit enter at the end of this line and created a second paragraph of text under it. So that's an option within Ink if you want to, kind of line break out your text or something like that. And then I've got another series of choices here. These choices kind of lead to different major sections of the game. So the user's got a bunch of different options like, were you employed by this character, etc. You'll notice that the way I've labeled these choices is with an asterisk in front of them instead of a plus symbol. So let me highlight one real quick for you like this. So the previous choices you saw had a plus symbol in front of them. These ones have an asterisk in front of them. Basically, the difference between the two is a symbol with an asterisk gets quote unquote used up. So if the user clicks on that option and then somehow returns to this chunk of the story again, they can't select that option a second time. So if I select were you employed by the old man and then get back to the game start page somehow, I would not be able to choose were you employed by the old man again. So it depends on the kind of structure of your story and the way that you're putting things together, whether you want to use those quote unquote plus sign choices or the like quote unquote asterisk choices, I guess is the easiest way to describe the difference. The plus sign choices don't get used up, so you can reuse them. If the user resees that content again, they can select that option again, whereas the asterisk signs do. And this is gonna, the way you use these choices is gonna be based on like how the content or the flow of your story is organized. If there's a place where there's a lot of loops and the user is gonna return to the same section over and over again, you may need those plus sign choices. Then again, if you're doing looping content, but you don't want the user to be able to pick the same option every time when they loop back to that section of the story, use an asterisk sign choice, so they'll have less options the next time that they show up there. So you've got kind of two different ways that you can put it together. I will mention Ink can definitely create an infinite loop. So it's something that you can do. It will break the editor. So I will highly recommend that you don't create an infinite loop, but there's no like protection for that. So I'll recommend like be cautious about that and pay attention if you're, especially if you're using looped content, it's very easy to kind of like mess up the flow of your story. So the last thing I'm going to kind of talk about here, and I'm going to just jump down to the very, very bottom of the story to show you this. There's a lot of content in here, like I mentioned, it's labeled with the advanced tags. You can see me kind of scrolling past a couple of those lengthy advanced comments. I will talk about those in another video. So keep in mind in this video right now, I'm not necessarily going to do like a big overview of the advanced Ink content. I think it's better to kind of break that stuff up and give you some time to play with some of the things that I've talked about in this video and like kind of wrap your head around the structure of Ink and how it works and how it's set up and things like that. But I'm going to obviously draw your attention to one more thing because this will be important and it's something that you always need to do when you're working with Ink, is simply put in an ending to your story. So you can see right here, there's like this kind of final divert, and it looks like a divert. Basically, I'm going to use this little arrow symbol, but instead of going to a knot, it just says end after it. And that's basically the end of an Ink story. So like the final part of your Ink story needs to have like a divert to the quote unquote word end. If you're making more than one distinct ending for your story, like there's going to be multiple different paths that the user can go down to, you're probably going to need multiple end symbols at the end of each one of those endings. What I did here was instead put all my ending inside content inside of a knot called final ending and just used different coding functionality to like vary up the text that they see inside of that knot. So I only needed one end to make that work. But that's just an option. There's other options that you can use as well where you organize it differently, and it's okay to have more than one end tag. If you don't put an end tag in, Ink will give you an error. And let me delete the end tag real quick just so you can see what it looks like. So if you look here, you're going to see this like one exclamation point up at the top, and there's this little line that says apparent loose end exists where the flow runs out. Do you need a done statement, choice, or divert? What that means is at the end of this line, up here on line 114, the story just kind of ends. And right now, Ink is recognizing that like it doesn't go to an ending tag, it doesn't go to what's called a done tag, which is another option that you've got that can kind of tell Ink this little chunk of the story is done, as opposed to the entire story is done, or a divert or something like that. So this is called a loose end warning. And what Ink does is pays attention to your story flow. And if it sees a place where the story flow is kind of broken, like it just runs out, but the story is not actually over, it will give you a warning like this. So you want to pay attention for those warnings. And the most common one you'll probably see is this loose end warning. You will see it pop up continuously until you put an end into your story. So like make sure that you actually add in an ending tag. But that will help prevent the loose end errors, and it's something that's obviously critical to make your story work, is to like decide on what the ending is actually going to be. So again, the goal here was just to give you kind of a quick overview of some of Ink's basic functionality. What I've shown you here is how to make diverts, choices, and nots. And again, I'll real quickly run down what the code for each one of these looks again at the very end. So here is a divert. This lets me move to another chunk of the story. What I've got here is a not, which lets me label a chunk of the story so I can divert to it, basically. And what I've got here is a choice. So this is how I actually give the user something to click on. So those are kind of the three basic functions that I was trying to review in this video. That should be enough to help you put together a basic choose your own adventure story. So I hope that is helpful, and I wish you luck in kind of constructing that story for yourself.